What's up, you guys? Sean Rossat, managing editor at Fightful.com, FightfulMMA.com. Big weekend of MMA, 2 Bellator shows, 2 UFC shows, Wilder and Fury. I'm going to post this fight review on the Pro Wrestling and the MMA channel. We post our fight reviews over on the Pro Wrestling channel to kind of give them a little bit of buzz. We're still growing that MMA side of things, but I'm doing a full weekend event wrap-up of all the important fights after UFC Adelaide on Saturday night. Carlos Toro will be bringing you the Wilder versus Fury post-show, live coverage of everything this weekend. But let's take a look at Kamaru Usman dominating Rafael Dos Anjos on his way to an Ultimate Fighter 28 finale main event win. He was able to control Dos Anjos, and with the exception of a few fleeting spots, as we see this up kick that Dos Anjos landed, really his best offense of the fight. Usman was able to really just hold Rafael Dos Anjos down up against the cage. Dos Anjos briefly threatened with a double wrist lock, but Usman rolled right out of it, stood up, and really started to feel himself in the middle rounds and opened up with body punches and combinations. But ultimately, it was the wrestling that would do Rafael Dos Anjos in. Here's a look at Usman actually teeing off on Rafael Dos Anjos during the fight. But, I mean, Rafael Dos Anjos, I mean, you heard a lot of people say he's not a welterweight. He's not a welterweight. I disagree with that. The man made it to a welterweight title fight. He's more than a perfectly serviceable welterweight. It's just that Usman is a very good welterweight. He's a 9-0 welterweight in the UFC, 11-0 if you include the TUF House. He has wins over Damian Maia, Leon Edwards, Sean Strickland, and this was the level of the win that Usman needed for you to know that he belonged in a title fight. Now, am I going to pretend that a Kamaru Usman title fight against Tyron Woodley or Colby Covington would be exciting? Well, I can't guarantee that, especially in an age where most UFC title fights are very exciting. But Usman dominated this fight, 49-45, 48-47, 50-43. That 48-47 doesn't really tell the story of this fight. I'm inclined to believe the 50-43 a lot more than the 48-47, which that should tell you how wild scoring is right now. One person thought it was as close as a round. Another person gave Usman a 7-point advantage. Dos Anjos has now lost 2 in a row. Usman now 9-0 in the UFC. I don't know how you can give him anything but a title eliminator. Colby Covington, by all accounts, is still the UFC interim welterweight champion, although they don't promote it. When the rankings were changed to the new format in which UFC redid their website, that's the first time we've seen Covington not listed as an interim champion. However, we don't know how interim champions look on that new layout. Up until then, he was still listed as such. Dan Lambert, his manager, has said that he has not been informed of being stripped of the title. So they're operating on the assumption that he still is. Kamaru Usman, dominant over Rafael Dos Anjos. Remember, we'll have that full coverage for you of all the important fights of the TUF 28 finale, Bellator 210 and 211, although there's only really one big fight there. And not even that big. It's Alessio Sakara in the main event. And UFC Adelaide tomorrow night. We're going to do that on the Pro Wrestling channel. Carlos Toro will be live on the Boxing and MMA channel covering Wilder versus Fury. Leave us a thumbs up, guys. Subscribe. We're out.